Andrew Tate. What is Andrew Tate doing? Seems like he might be laying low for a while. And do you blame him? It's easy to sit back and say, I would do this, I would do that. It reminds me when I'm watching someone boxing in the ring. Even though I've fought many times, amateur and professional, and in the street, I still sit back there and say, oh, he should do this, he should do that. But it's different when you're in the ring. The same as right now, Andrew is in the ring of life. He took a pretty hard blow getting locked up. I would say it probably came as a surprise. And as I read, someone had written in a comment, to go from being able to travel all over the world and do the things he can do, the freedoms he has, because a lot of time when you have more money, it gives you more freedoms to exercise your desires. To go from that to being locked up, not knowing when he was going to get out. And I honestly did not think they would let him out until the 180 days, if they even let him out then. I thought they may wait till the 180, then charge him, and then keep him in there. So I was really surprised and pleased when they let him out. So who's to say what he's going to do? My guess would be he's probably doing some contemplation right now. Then maybe not. He had plenty of time to contemplate when he was locked up, although it was probably a challenge keeping his mind on what he wanted instead of what he was afraid of. And that's a challenge all of us have every day, whether we're locked up or whether we're free. Are we ever really free from our mind? Everything happens within the mind. I've said this before. Andrew talked about, first they would try to shut him up, and if that didn't work, they would lock him up. And then he said the last resort, or the last option would be they would eliminate him. So now he has to decide, if he hasn't already, whether he wants to continue to profess his ideas and to have the influence on the people of the world and take the chance of them exercising that last option, or whether he decides to move on with something else. I don't think anyone could blame him if he decided to move on with something else and decided to stay out of the limelight. What will he do? I don't know. He may not even know at the moment what he plans to do. If he were a friend of mine, I would suggest that he lay low and stay away from, how would I say, stepping on the toes of the powerful people. But I would add to that, you have to do what you believe you came here to do. Because if you don't, you will never be able to feel, how do I say, the fulfillment. Or you will not fulfill the purpose you came here for. And I don't know what his purpose is. I know he has a message for the common person, that you don't have to be common. That you don't have to fall in line and serve the matrix, as he calls it. What he is doing is what many, how would I say, famous or influential people who have done throughout history. Now, let's name off a few. Mahatma Gandhi, Jesus Christ, Jesus the Christ. Let me see, who's a few more? William Wallace, the Braveheart guy. Nelson Mandela. I know there's a lot more, but I can't name them all off. And some of you may say, well, he's nothing like Jesus. How do you know? Well, Tate runs around with these women. He flaunts all his women. He does this, he does that. I'm comparing him in this respect, that he's speaking out to help the common person. Jesus taught the common man that he didn't have to follow the dictates of the higher powers, at least the higher powers on earth, that he could make his own way in life, that he had the same power to create the life he wanted just as they did. Now, how much different is that than the message of Andrew Tate? And a lot of you, no, some of you may think, well, yeah, but Jesus was holy, he was perfect, he was this, he was that. You know that in Jesus' time, at least as far as the history books write, he was considered a criminal by the government at the time and by many of the people. And as it is written, they yelled out to crucify him. The people did, as well as the government. Actually, the government asked the people, what do you want us to do? And they said, crucify him and let Barabbas go, who was the criminal. So that's something to think about. Now, we don't know whether Jesus had a wife or whether he was a womanizer. And some people will get pissed off if I even say that. But I don't know. I'm not saying he is or he isn't. You were not there. I wasn't either. So none of us really know what he was like, what his personal life was like. All we know is what was written about him. In the first 30 years of his life, there's not much written about him whatsoever. So he could have been out there living like a lot of us when we were younger. Living the high life, partying, chasing women, and then maybe his life fell apart. And that's when he became awakened. As I said, some people aren't going to like that, but I'm just throwing it out there. I'm not saying that's what happened. I'm saying that's a possibility. And unless you or I were there, and we weren't, none of us really know. Now, we can believe whatever we want to, but what really happened, we don't really know. None of us heard it, none of us seen it, none of us spoke to him personally. Nelson Mandela is another one. He was locked up for, I think, some 27 years because of his ideas and his desire to help the common person to have a better life. He was considered a criminal also, and he came out after all that time and I think became the president of that country. So if you look back through the pages of history, anyone who has spoken out and told the common man that he could be more than what he is, that he didn't have to be a slave to the elites or the governments, that he could have his own life the way he wanted it to, they have gone after those people and persecuted them and eliminated them and locked them up. So that's something to think about. I've experienced something similar on a lot lower level with local government because I decided to stand up against what was going on, and I had to leave the country for 6 years. I came back, made my peace with them, and the end of the table deal was I'll keep my mouth shut and they'll leave me alone. And that's exactly what I did, because I did not have the power to take them on. Nor does Andrew Tate. And as he said, he knows what will happen if he continues. He will be eliminated. And there again, that goes back to we are a self-fulfilling prophecy. What we speak, we create in life. 2 of the things he predicted and said would happen to him have happened to him. Does he want to go for the 3rd? I wouldn't if I were him, but I'm not him. Is it worth it? He has made a great impression on men everywhere around the world. Some people hate him. Some people like him. I like his message because he speaks as the men spoke when I grew up. That was the way men spoke, just like he speaks now. And one of the problems we have in the West is we don't have too many men left anymore. We have feminized, weak men. I have a friend that was in the services, the Army, for quite some time. And he said a lot of the young men coming in for basic training, they fall out within a few weeks because their bones are not strong enough to keep from getting broken during the rigorous basic training. They get stress fractures. They just can't tough it out. Too many young men are growing up behind screens. They're not out playing. They're not out running. They're not out jumping. They're not climbing trees. They're not out doing things kids used to do to become strong young men. And they're also discouraged in schools and places to not stand up for themselves and fight if someone provokes them or bullies them or hurts them. I know in my school up here that my children go through, they're told to cover up and wait for someone to come and rescue them. Wait for a higher authority to come and rescue them. So what does that program children who become young men to do? To submit everything to a higher authority. To not fight for yourself, but yet if the government or your country wants you to go fight, you're supposed to give your life willingly. But yet from the time you're raised up in schools and through college also, I imagine, they have a no tolerance policy on fighting. Even if it's self-defense, you will get kicked out of school. And let's look at this latest thing with the colleges and some of the schools. To work there and to attend some of the colleges now, you have to go along with the agenda of the government, which profits Big Pharma. And I can't go into too many details about that, but you can figure out what that is yourself. You're not allowed to make that choice yourself. Unless you decide that the 2 or 3 years you put into college, you're just going to throw away, or the job you've worked at for 20 years, you're just going to walk away from it. Some people have done that. And I must admire people for having the bravery and the courage and the integrity of character to do that. And these are the kinds of things Andrew Tate speaks about. Being a strong man of integrity. Is he perfect? No, he's not. Are you perfect? No, you're not. Am I perfect? No, I'm not. Has he done things maybe he wish he could change or that he doesn't want to do anymore? Of course he has. We all have. Many of the things that people don't like him for are things taken out of context on YouTube and different platforms. I could find anybody on YouTube and pick something out in a short form or short or reel and put it on there and make them look like they're jerks, taken out of context. They could do it to me. Some of the things people say about him, it's like, didn't you watch the whole video? But sometimes people pick and choose. And you really have to be careful with social media and mainline news, and even some of the news that's not mainline, because they always slant it to the way that's going to get you to view, and a lot of times they use fear to get you to view. And again, that's something else Andrew Tate talks about, is not being, he doesn't say you don't have to be afraid. He talks about facing fear, about being a man of courage. Now, do you think when he was in jail that he didn't have some fears that he might not get out? Of course he did. He would not be human if he didn't have fear. And does he have some fear now? Probably, because it's not over yet. The question is he allowing those fears to control him? Are you allowing your fears to control you? It's a better question. Because Andrew can take care of Andrew. Obviously, if you've watched him and you know a little bit about him, he didn't get to where he's at today by being a coward. And now, what is the difference between a hero and a coward? Do you know? No. The hero has fear, the same as the coward. He's not fearless. The difference is, the hero confronts his fear. He walks through it. Not around it. He doesn't turn around and leave. The coward turns around and walks away. He lives another day. But what kind of life is that? I'm sure you, as myself, have sometime had a fear and didn't walk through it. Maybe you saw a girl, you really wanted to talk to her, but you thought, oh man, she probably isn't going to like me. You were afraid. So you walked away. And you felt terrible and you wondered, what would have happened if I would have went and talked to her? Maybe she would have liked me. Maybe I would have liked her. Maybe I wouldn't have liked her. But you never knew because you did not confront the fear and take advantage of the opportunity that was presented to you by God, by life, by whatever you believe in, by happen chance, coincidence. But it was no coincidence when you turned away and didn't do what you really wanted to do. Everything you want in life, fear is between you and everything you desire in life. Now you have to use common sense. If Andrew Tate stopped and never didn't do any more of what he was doing before, speaking out, is he acting on fear? Maybe, but he may just be acting on good common sense. Would I get in the ring? Someone asked me one time a long time ago when Tyson was in his prime, would you get in the ring with Mike Tyson? I said, no way, for $1 million or something. No, I wouldn't. Because I'm afraid? Yes, I'm afraid, but that's not what's stopping me. That guy was dangerous enough that he could hit me one time. If he got me with a good punch, I could be damaged permanently. So common sense tells me not to get in a ring with a guy like that. So if Andrew decides not to speak out anymore, I believe, knowing at least what I know about him, that he's just using some good common sense. If you have a foe that is too great for you to defeat, is it valor or bravery to continue to fight them even though you know you're going to get defeated? Well, that is a question that I guess each of us have to ask for ourselves. Maybe he has some ideas about how he can overcome this. I don't know. I do know that with his prophecy, what he says will happen, there's a really good chance if he believes that will happen, then he will be eliminated. And I really don't want to see him eliminated. I think he's made a difference in a lot of lives, a lot of people's lives, positively. I know there's some people out there that don't think that way, and that's fine. I can understand why they might not think that way, but I believe he's made a good difference in people's lives, and I think if he continues to go on and succeed as he is, even if he doesn't speak out against the matrix or whatever you want to call it, I think he still will have an influence on people because people will still be curious about him and watching him. What do I think he'll do? I think I asked myself that question earlier. I'm not sure what he's going to do. Time will tell, and we're just going to have to wait and see. But I respect him either way. If he lays low and just goes back to his business and does what he's doing and stays away from social media, then I'll respect him the same as I will if he decides to stand up and continue to speak as he has. And that's all I'm going to say today. We'll just have to wait and see what happens. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate you guys. Let me know what you think in the comment section. And take care. Have a great evening.